Good morning, everybody. My name is Justin Prine. I'm a Deputy Commissioner here with the Department of Correction, and it's my absolute honor to have each and every one of you here today with us to celebrate a truly momentous occasion, 50 years in the making. 50 years that every person here has played big parts, small parts, but certainly integral parts in where we are today. So we are absolutely delighted to have you. We're going to put on what we think is going to be really an excellent program. So thank you for coming. Do a little rain dance over the next couple hours. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I would ask that you all stand and remain standing for the presentation of colors by the Department of Corrections Ceremonial Honor Guard, the national anthem by our Sergeant Renard Brown, and the invocation to be delivered by Father Paul Tolby. Thank you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare the bomb bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say goes the star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Order, halt! Honor guard, mark time, halt! Forward, halt! Honor guard, halt! All scholars. Mark time, halt! Forward, halt!
Let us now place our hearts and minds in the presence of God. O God of all creation, of all time, and of all memory, we gather today at this highly skilled and trained facility, the Westchester County Department of Correction, to ask your blessing and divine presence as we celebrate the inception, the development, the achievements, and imaginative energy of this great department as it has evolved through these past 50 years. O God, your Spirit inspired our commissioners and their staffs to develop this Department of Correction into a place where the dignity of incarcerated persons can aspire to rehabilitate their manner of life and reintegrate into society with specific skill sets. Your divine hand has been evident in blessing this department with leadership that has and increasingly continues to pursue all avenues of professionalism, vision, partnership, and willpower. It is because of these past and present incentives, the best practiced standards, and more so than ever, involved participation with our local citizens, county government, and places of worship, we have arrived by your grace to this place and this time in our history. We praise you, we rejoice in you, and we express our deepest gratitude for being able to help people in their darkest moments of life, and to offer a glimpse of light by which human life and dignity can strive for betterment today and always. Send your dynamic spirit upon all gathered here, and in a special way bless every person who has held positions of authority in this department in the past 50 years. Give them and their families good health, protection, and peace. Bless all those in their specific professions and jobs who have worked and continue to work here now. They have all helped in making this a top-notch facility. Finally, send your spirit and protection upon our County Executive George Latimer and his staff, and upon our Commissioner Joseph K. Spano and all members of his staff. May you, O God, who has no beginning and no end, preserve us in peace on this day and throughout our lives. Amen.
Thank you very much, Father Paul. Everyone, you could please be seated now. And thank you to the Westchester Pipes and Drums, the Honor Guards, and Sergeant Brown. Let's give them all a round of applause. Again, welcome everyone. We're so honored that everyone could be here with us today, that you took the time out of your schedule. This is an event that we've been prepping for well over a year now, and quite literally 50 years in the making. We appreciate having guests here today from as far as California to as close as White Plains and the top of the hill. So we have a lot of local retirees and people that have really taken a lot of time out of their schedule, so thank you. We have several members of our staff, our command staff, our new recruits who will be graduating from the academy in a couple weeks, so all levels of correctional staff are here with us today. And it's really my privilege to introduce several key guests here today with us. The first being County Executive George Latimer. We are also greatly honored to have our former County Executive, Andy Spano, here with us today. And from County Executive Latimer's team, we have several members of his team. Chief of Operations, Joan McDonald. Deputy County Executive, Ken Jenkins. We have County Attorney John Nona with us. His Director of Communications, Catherine Chaffee's here with us as well. And from our DOC executive team, we have Commissioner Joe Spano. We are joined by two former commissioners today. Our current County Commissioner of Probation, Rocco Posey. Former Commissioner Kevin Chiverko. From our executive team, First Deputy Commissioner Luis Molina. Deputy Commissioner of Operations Leandro Diaz. We're joined by two former Deputy Commissioners, Clyde Isley and Joseph Miranda. We have our Department Chief, James Biratella, with us. A person who does so much for our population, Director of Programs, Nori Padilla. And another person who does so much for them spiritually, Father Paul Tovey. On behalf of our co-equal branch of government, the Westchester County Board of Legislators, we are honored to have our chairman, Chairman of the Board, Benjamin Boykin. We are joined by former Board Chairman Richard Wishney. And today we are really honored to have the oldest living member of what was then the Board of Supervisors. Before the Board of Legislators began and before this department began, a person who really played a direct and pivotal role in the establishment of this agency, Legislator Herman Geist. And we are also joined today by two active members of the legislature, Legislature Catherine Parker and Legislator Damon Marr. We're also joined by several commissioners, department heads, deputy commissioners, retired deputy commissioners, retired commissioners from other departments that we work with hand in hand every day, including DPW, Community Mental Health, DSS, IT, County Police, Budget, Emergency Services. Please, as a group, stand and be recognized, our partners. Thank you. Come on. And traveling down from the Capital Region today, we have Chairman Alan Riley of the New York State Commission of Correction. And we also want to recognize that nothing gets done around here without labor, without our workforce. And we recognize our union presidents and our retired union presidents, one of whom is probably one of the most newest retirees here, that being President Alonzo West. And Alonzo recently handed the keys off to Neil Pallone, President. And from the union representing our captains, our sergeants, our assistant wardens, First Vice President Scott Dreesen. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, it's my privilege to introduce to you somebody who was truly a catalyst behind today's ceremony. He got the ball rolling in every sense of the word. It's our first speaker, a professor, a retired corrections chief of staff, and a member of our newly established by County Executive Latimer. He established our Corrections Advisory Board. We're joined by two other Correction Advisory Board members today, Kim Cox and Rhea Millette. Anthony Zarnecki has been a part of our department for almost 4 decades. He's truly a part of history and a historian. Professor Zarnecki has published extensively on Westchester County's history, including about Abraham Lincoln's secret visit to West Point in 1862, and about the life and history of Westchester's first probation officer, William Mountney, and about the history of this very department. As I said, over a year ago, Tony put us on a path to where we are today, when he told us he was working on a new project about the career of our first Corrections Commissioner, Roberts Wright. He also reminded us that 2019 was our 50th year as a standalone criminal justice agency. Today, Professor Zarnecki is going to provide us all with the backstory of exactly how we came to be, why there's that 1969 on the pin that everybody got today. It's a story which centers on a very special man who is the true definition of a progressive social reformer, our first commissioner, Roberts Wright. Anthony?
Good morning. I first want to publicly thank Commissioner Joseph Spano and his leadership team for organizing today's celebration and reunion. They have done a wonderful job. I also want to personally welcome back to Westchester County Commissioner Wright's daughter, Jenny, who joins us today from California with her husband, Norman. I had the privilege to work directly for 6 exceptional commissioners of correction, but I never met or worked with the first commissioner. So my curiosity put me on a 7-month research journey. Thank you, Jenny, for allowing me to document your father's life and legacy. And I would be remiss if I did not publicly also thank the Westchester County Historical Society for publishing my research on Commissioner Wright. Thank you, Suzanne Panditch. You know, the blockbuster Broadway musical Hamilton has a song entitled "The Room Where It Happened." It's sung by a disgruntled Aaron Burr, who was excluded from the deliberations that decided where the capital of the new United States of America would be located. The room where it happened was in the residence of Thomas Jefferson on Maiden Lane in New York City. For the Westchester County Department of Correction, the The room where it happened was on the 9th floor of the county office building on Martine Avenue in White Plains. There in 1964, then County Executive Edwin McCallion appointed a 5-member Citizens Committee on penal institutions that would decide the future of the correctional system in Westchester. After 15 months of study, the group strongly recommended the creation of a new Department of Correction that would oversee the operations of the county jail, then run by an elected sheriff, and the county penitentiary, which was separately run by the Department of Public Welfare. 3 years later, in 1968, the Westchester County Board of Supervisors unanimously, thank you, Herman Geist, unanimously passed Local Law Number 3-1968, creating a new Department of Correction effective January 1st, 1969. Final approval was granted by the New York State Legislature, which had to amend some sections of correction law and county law. County Executive McCallion didn't waste any time, didn't need a search committee. He appointed Bob Wright of White Plains, the head of his study group on penal institutions, to become Westchester's first Commissioner of Correction. It was a perfect choice. Mr. Wright had started his career as a correction officer in Massachusetts, worked for 22 years as the assistant director of the Prison Association of New York, managed disciplinary barracks and brigs for the U.S. Navy during World War II, served as warden of the Westchester County Penitentiary for 4 years, was elected president of the American Correctional Association, and was in the middle of his second term as a member of the New York State Parole Board when he became our first Commissioner of Correction 50 years ago in 1969. When he was sworn into office by County Executive McCallion, Bob Wright publicly proclaimed his goal to create an outstanding Department of Correction. During the next 6 years, he proved himself to be a man of vision and a man of values. He set the bar high, and all of his successors have continued to raise that bar. There are 5 important takeaways from Bob Wright's tenure as warden and commissioner in Westchester. His work built a strong foundation for the department's growth and achievement during the past 50 years. First, Commissioner Wright's commitment to social justice. When Bob Wright convened the 1958 Congress of Correction in Detroit as president of the American Correctional Association, he declared his support for a new concept, which was, quote, in his words, implementation of the broad philosophy of social justice. His humane instincts were a half-century ahead of his time. It inspired his daughter to spend the summer of 1964 in the segregated community of Canton, Mississippi, organizing a freedom school and promoting voter registration. Phones were tapped and lives were threatened. So thank you, Jenny, for your courage and your bravery at a time when your country needed you most. And in 1972, Commissioner Wright made history when he hired the first African-American warden in Westchester. Norwood Jackson became his second in command and would later serve the department as commissioner for 8 years. Today, the Department of Correction is perhaps the most diverse agency in the entire county government. Second, Wright's commitment to treatment and programming. Commissioner Wright had the foresight to employ a full-time psychologist for crisis intervention work and a full-time psychiatrist to conduct group therapy sessions on addiction-related issues. In 1970, he hosted the annual dinner of AA groups in Westchester at the county penitentiary, where there was an active AA group. Wright was determined to deal with the alcohol abuse, drug addiction, and mental health problems that inmates brought to the county's correctional system. He was not adverse to innovation, he embraced it. Today, the Department of Correction operates in excess of 20 separate programs to put offenders on a better path. Third, Wright's commitment to promoting excellence in the correctional field. In addition to his work as president of the American Correctional Association, Bob Wright served for 30 years as the editor of the American Journal of Correction, which became the official publication of the American Correctional Association. It served as an important forum for debate and discussion within the correctional field. Because of his many significant contributions to his profession, Bob Wright was formally honored by ACA in 1970 with their prestigious E.R. Cass Award for lifetime achievement in the correctional field. He was a strong advocate for national standards and is considered one of the founding fathers of ACA's accreditation process. Today, Westchester's Department of Correction stands alone as the only large jail system in New York State that has achieved full compliance with ACA's accreditation standards. Fourth, Wright's commitment to partner with the community. In 1971, Commissioner Wright opened up the Department of Correction to the judges in Westchester when he hosted a dinner at the county penitentiary for 55 members of the Westchester County Magistrates Association, which has become an annual tradition. As a result of his initiative, New York State's chief judge now mandates that all Superior Court judges in New York State visit their local jail or nearby prison at least once during their term of office. And in his home community of White Plains, Bob Wright served as president of the Interchurch Council of White Plains and was later elected as president of the board of directors of the White Plains YMCA. Throughout his life, Bob Wright remained faithful to the motto of his alma mater, Springfield College in Massachusetts, which is leadership in service to others. Today, the Department of Correction partners with the faith-based community and many organizations to promote personal growth, parenting skills, violence prevention, literacy skills, and substance abuse recovery. Fifth, Wright's commanding respect for the dignity and importance of the workforce in correctional institutions. When he retired in 1974, Commissioner Wright issued a long addendum to his last annual report, which he entitled Reflections on 42 Years. In it, he expressed his profound debt of gratitude to his correction officers. According to Wright, quote, "The correction officer, not unlike the teacher, is the one person in constant, hour-by-hour contact with the prisoner. His or her value and role is reflected by personal qualities of honesty, integrity, and professional dedication. The complexities of the criminal mind more and more call for sophistication on the part of the line officer. Reasoning, understanding, sensitivity, and concern are the necessary attributes of those who choose corrections as a professional career. The department's personnel, each and every one, deserves the credit for our status and enviable reputation. Wright concluded his valediction with a challenge to the department's future leadership and workforce. Quote, "Look to the future, as in the past, with a willingness for change, experimentation, and achievement." Robert J. Wright challenged us to embrace change, experimentation, and achievement. And guided by the legacy of its first Commissioner of Correction, the Westchester County Department of Correction has demonstrated time and again during the past 50 years that it is willing to change, experiment, and achieve. So congratulations to all of you on today's truly historic milestone event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief Zarnecki. And everyone here today has a copy of that article on Robert's Right. We urge you to read it. It's really an excellent, excellent read. And some of you folks in the last rows, our new academy, we have people here who are in their early 20s. You could very well be here for the centennial 50 years from now. So not all of us, obviously, but someone back there is 21, 22, and you're going to be here in 2069. Right? Cool. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, it's my privilege to introduce our next speaker, and somebody that has touched virtually every person in this room, certainly everybody who has worked under him or worked alongside him in the course of the last 38 years, as he will tell you today. Importantly, it's somebody who believes in the mission of this agency, of the greater Latimer administration, and whose first and foremost priority is always everyone in this room's safety and everyone in this room's success. Under his leadership as the COBA president for 9 years, Westchester County correction officers secured unheard of protections through legislative changes in Albany and locally, including as related to line of duty injuries. During his time as the special assistant to the commissioner, deputy commissioner, and as our commissioner, he played a pivotal role in ensuring that we became certified by the ACA, as Tony spoke about, and that we maintained accreditation by the National Commission on Correctional Healthcare. And in doing so, he took this department forward to make sure that everyone knows that we are a national leader in correctional practices. At this time, I'm very proud to introduce a friend, a mentor, and our commissioner, Joseph Spano.
Thank you, and thank you, Deputy Commissioner Prine. And Tony, thank you for your presentation. You know, it's important to understand what was happening in the 1960s, to get a sense of what the driving factors were that led to the creation of the Westchester County Department of Correction. And it's as equally important to know more and learn more about our first commissioner, because Jenny and Norma, what an amazing individual. I mean, his contributions to this department were significant, but over the course of his 42-year career, his contributions to the criminal justice system were amazing. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for coming from California. And I hope you can tell it took a lot of work to put this event together. I mean, so many people chipped in and helped us. We had help from the unions, we had help from retirees, and a lot of our workforce here at DOC, and the population that we serve. A lot of the inmates participated and worked with us, getting the grounds together, putting these wonderful pictures together for all of you to look at, and you know, And I know, I saw the faces on some of you when you looked into those pictures, probably shocked as to what you looked like 40 years ago. But it does bring back wonderful memories. And, today's a special day for me as well. And we didn't plan it this way. 37 years ago today, I walked into that academy with my classmate, Anthony Gerussi. Anthony, thank you so much for the work that you did putting this event together. I mean, it's just amazing. And Deputy Commissioner, he recognized some of the wonderful folks who are here with us today. But just know that this is an event where the past and the present has come together, and every level of correctional professional and partnership is represented here today. And that includes wardens, captains, sergeants, correction officers. We have Anthony Ferriola with us. Started working here in 1965, Anthony. Followed by his son, and followed by his granddaughter, who still works for this agency. I would imagine the 3 generations spans beyond the 50 years. So thank you for joining us, Anthony. I mean, it's just wonderful to see you. We have our partners, our medical providers, food service providers. We have educators here. We have our program partners. We have community partners. We have every level of DOC administrative staff represented here, maintenance staff. And that's what it took over the years, all of the aforementioned working together, making sacrifices, doing what it was necessary to get through the challenging times. And we had plenty of challenging times. That's part of the theme today: challenges, changes, and accomplishments. And in preparing for this event, some folks said, "You're not going to talk about those difficult times, are you?" Of course I'm going to talk about those difficult times. Because how we responded to and addressed those difficult times, that's what has shaped us as an agency over the past 50 years. And Commissioner Wright, he had challenges when he took office. Just merging 2 departments on its own is a significant challenge. Then he had to manage a newly opened women's unit, which had opened 2 years earlier in 1967. Had some labor issues. What's old is what's new, right? Had some labor issues because in the penitentiary, the workforce was unionized, not on the jail side. He had to put a plan together to address that. And as Tony Zarnecki talked about, he was focused on rehabilitation and programs. But at that time, programs were basically limited to the penitentiary. So he had to put a plan in place to expand those programs to the jail and to the women's unit. And that sounds easy, so what's the big deal? It becomes a resource issue. That's the big deal. But working with his team, he found a way. He put a plan together to address those concerns. And in 1974, when he retired, Jenny, he left this department in a great place with a solid foundation and a vision for success, for sure. So I want to thank you again because it's just so great seeing you here today. And Al Gray was appointed commissioner in 1974. I think he held that post for approximately 9 years, and he had to deal with some significant challenges. From 74 to 1980, the inmate census rose by 63%, and from 80 to 81 by another 25%. Tony is going to write that down and fact check it later. No doubt about it. I'll bet you I have a lot of fact checkers in the audience. Why is that significant? Because the department was not equipped to manage that type of increase. And as most of you here know, That overcrowding contributed to the 1981 riot. And we can talk about that because that event changed the course and direction of this department. Subsequent investigations and lawsuits led to probably hundreds of operational changes. Changes that were designed to improve conditions for both staff and offenders. And something else happened in 1981, and I'm going to direct this to the new recruits because something significant happened in 81 as it relates to labor. You came to this job because the salary, the benefits, the protections, they're very attractive. Took a lot of years and a lot of hard work to get to that point. Beginning in 1977, when some of you here in this room as correction officers got together and made a plan to decertify from CSEA. All respect to CSEA. You wanted to form your own union. You wanted to go after benefits, protections, and salary equal to that of law enforcement agencies. The first two attempts were not successful. But in 1981, after the riot, and I see my good friend Mike Wittenberg smiling, the correction officers took a hard line and refused to return to the building. And that resulted in one of those magical meetings right here up at the Cabin Restaurant with Mike Wittenberg, labor director for probably 40 years, Tom Camaro, who's sorry he couldn't join us here today, and County Executive Al Del Bello. And as part of that meeting, an agreement was reached to allow the correction officers to decertify, and that's when COBA was formed, the Correction Officers Benevolent Association. And over the course of the next 35 plus years, and labor leaders with the support of their memberships, with the support of DOC management, county executives, county legislators, they did go on to secure benefits, protections, and salary in line with other law enforcement agencies. That's why today the job of Westchester Correction Officer is one of the most attractive in the correction space. And I proudly tell you that we have one of the most highly diverse, well-trained, professional law enforcement workforces in Westchester County. I'm going to try not to be too long, but it's difficult to crunch 50 years of experiences and milestones that changed the course of this department. And that's certainly applicable to the 80s. You're not hearing this through the eyes of Joe Spano. I talked to a lot of former and current members in anticipation of this event. And the consensus is that the 80s were the most complicated and difficult decade, for sure. Not just because of the riot, because over the next 4 or 5 years, when the riot occurred, the inmate census was in the 700s. Over the course of the next 4 or 5 years, it rose to 1,800. Yeah, overwhelming the court system, overwhelming the jail system. Conditions were unhealthy and unsafe for staff and offender. And it's okay to talk about that. Because, you know, we leaned on each other, we supported one another, we found a way to work through it. We did, but it was complicated. And Tony Zarnecki mentioned that Warden Norwood E. Jackson was appointed commissioner in 1986, and that he was appointed in 1972 as a warden. He had an opportunity to work side by side with Commissioner Wright, Commissioner Gray, and Commissioner John Mafucci. And he had to leverage every bit of that experience and all of his political clout, working with County Executive O'Rourke, county legislators, State Commission of Correction, DPW, and he gained approval to build a 528-bed jail tower. New generation, direct supervision, one of those game-changing milestone moments for this department. And at that time, he charged a warden with training and transitioning all staff into the new generation jail. And we're so pleased to have that warden with us today. He came up from Florida. He joined this department in 1969. Warden Raymond Klein, please stand and be recognized. That new generation style jail, it did change the course of this department. But simultaneously, Commissioner Jackson, he gained approval to hire hundreds of correction officers. Hundreds of correction officers through the late 80s and into the 90s, not just to man the new positions, was needed to provide relief to the correction staff who were being forced to work on average 5 days a week. I laugh now. Occasionally we have to force somebody to work here, and you would think, what the heck happened? You know, and you tell them for 2 or 3 years we had to work 5 16-hour tours a week. They don't believe it. We did it. It's part of our history. But now I'm into the 90s, and those changes that were initiated by Commissioner Jackson really got things rolling in a better direction. And unfortunately, he passed away suddenly in 1995, and in tribute to all of his contributions and his honor, the jail tower was renamed to the Norwood E. Jackson Correctional Center, a large part of his legacy, a large part of our history. Deputy Commissioner Luke Smith was temporarily elevated to commissioner, and by all accounts, he did a wonderful job moving Commissioner Jackson's vision forward, and held that post until Joe Stancari was elevated to commissioner. And Commissioner Stancari, he had come up through the right ranks. He made significant contributions, a real security operations guy. Was the driving force behind the formation of the tactical unit in the 80s, introducing more specialized training, and implementing the emergency response team in the mid-90s. And that was another significant moment for us because it greatly enhanced overall safety for staff and offenders. And he'd be proud to know that that emergency response team is still in place. But now they work in a state-of-the-art command center where they could monitor movement throughout the facility, where they can override any of our locking systems. And that's just an indication of how far along we've come on the technological side. We now have over 1,200 cameras in place. Working with our medical provider, WellPath, we have 9 telemedicine stations in place. We're currently working with our food service provider, Aramark, to put commissary kiosk in all of the housing units. We have video visitation terminals in all of the housing units. We continue to look for ways to leverage technology to run safer, run more efficiently, and enhance the delivery and programs and services to the population we serve. And I know Commissioner Stancari would be proud of that. And on his watch, I'm pretty sure about this, a unique program was introduced to support young offenders, a unique education and vocational program, and that's when the Young Offenders Program started under his watch, and that program is still in place and making a difference in the lives of the young men that we serve. Then a new administration came in. County Executive Andy Spano, no relation. We have to always put forward that disclaimer. I think you were county executive for 12 years, and a lot of very good things happened under County Executive Spano's watch. And our new commissioner at that time was Commissioner Rocco Posey. Where are you, Commissioner Posey? if I remember correctly, I don't think the unions embraced the idea that you were commissioner of both corrections and probation at that time. You know, it's part of our history, but it didn't take us long to realize that he was a good fit for this department. And then one of the first order of businesses, and I remember this, Commissioner Posey, because it's something that was put in motion by Commissioner Stan Carey. He was vetting a new body alarm system for sworn staff, and he wasn't able to put it in place before he left. And with the support of the county executive, you implemented that new body alarm system, a body alarm system that is still in place here. Another one of those game-changing moments for us. But you had bigger challenges than that. You know, listen, the 80s were the most difficult. There were still challenges in the 90s, and there was some significant labor management issues that would they were dragging down both the workforce and the department. But we found a way, and I'm part of this we, I was union head at the time. We found a way. We found a way to address and resolve those problems, and we did it in a manner that was beneficial to all involved. And, you know, that 2000 settlement greatly improved the relations between labor and management, and we used that as a springboard going into the 21st century. But your challenges weren't over, Commissioner Posey, because you had to replace the 1916 penitentiary. It was beyond repair, beyond rehab. It had to be replaced. So a plan was developed, again, working with key people, county executive, state commission, county legislators, DPW. A plan was developed, and it was a unique plan because, yes, as part of that project, we got more direct supervision, housing, but we also got a state-of-the-art special housing units to humanely and safely house some of our most dangerous and complicated inmates. And we also got an interfaith chapel as part of that project. But probably most importantly, we got an education center. As part of that project, 2H dormitories were converted into an education center, and that surely was a game-changing moment for this organization. Because over the course of the next 14 or 15 years, under Commissioner Posey's leadership, under my leadership, under Commissioner Chaverko's leadership, back under my leadership, we expanded programs beyond anything that you will find in the correction space. We now, with the new additions, and you were off by a little bit, Tony, we have 31 active rehabilitation and reentry programs, and hundreds of community partners who work hand in hand with us to rehabilitate and treat returning citizens. And I lost my train of thought, but let's applaud that because that's a wonderful thing. And that's a large part of the reason why we're considered a leader in the space. And it's working. Talked about the census going as high as 1,800 in the 80s. When Commissioner Wright took office, I don't think most people know this, the census was approximately 400. Went as high as 1,800. I'm proud to say yesterday that our local census was 734, the lowest it's been in over 35 years. And we're also known for our certifications. We do operate under the best custodial and healthcare standards in the country. We are the only large local jail in New York State with dual accreditation status through the ACA and the NCCHC, National Commission on Correction Healthcare. And in this past January, our medical provider, WellPath, They successfully passed the 3-day audit, not only securing 100% compliance. Because the auditors were so impressed with their work, the Westchester County Department of Correction is being nominated for National Facility of the Year for inmate healthcare services. We have other unique certifications. Under the leadership of Commissioner Chiverko in 2017, this agency became the first jail to successfully pass a federal PREA audit, Prison Rape Elimination Act. And to this date, we are still the only jail in New York State with that important DOJ certification. And yeah. And something else special happened under the leadership of Commissioner Chiverko, because one of our challenges, and it's been a challenge for a while for all jails, is providing the right treatment and services for those individuals who are suffering from serious mental illness. And under his leadership, and through the great work of WellPath and our friends from Community Mental Health, a unique program was developed in a direct supervision unit to provide enhanced services for those individuals. And in 2016, that program won National Mental Health Program of the Year. And it's still a model for the country. And those are just some of the things that make us different and make us special, and have us recognized as a national leader. But one thing we know for certain, without the right partners, without a great workforce, those things don't happen. And that's why we purposely scheduled this event to happen during National Correctional Officers Week, a week in which we remember, we honor correctional professionals who have passed away. We must never forget them or their contributions. But it's also a week in which we recognize every level of correctional professional and the great work that they do 24/7 in a very complicated environment. And because the workforce here has done it so well over the course of 50 years, because they've been committed to supporting one another, to supporting the department's mission, to supporting the population that we serve, because of those things, that's why we're recognized as a national leader in the space, something each and every one of us should be very proud of. Probably spoke a little too long. I promise you I couldn't do more, but it's hard. It's hard to pull it all together. You know, a lot of good things are happening here, but we never must forget the path that we took to get here. We can't. But on behalf of my executive team, I just want to say thank you. Don't ever forget the following. Your hard work and your support made a difference. Thank you, and God bless you. Probably wondering why I'm still standing up here. Now I have the pleasure of introducing someone who's been a part of the successes here probably for 20 plus years in different capacities. As a county legislator, state legislator, and now county executive, supporting those capital projects, supporting those labor contracts, security and safety equipment, expansion of inmate programs and services. And I will tell you, from day one, he wanted to know what was happening inside our jail walls. And when I read a quote from your father, Commissioner Wright, and it's something he said at the end of his 1958 ACA presidential address, he said, "It's time for correctional professionals to stop hiding behind 25-foot walls and barriers. You know we're not hiding behind walls and barriers, but I promise you, our county executive wouldn't let it happen.
I'm very humbled to get to the microphone after what was one of the most brilliant outlines of 50 years of history, and there were no notes. He maintained eye contact. He spoke from his head, and he spoke from his heart. And where do you find that? Joe, outstanding. I'm very honored to be here for this event. It falls to my tenure to be here at the 50th anniversary, and all of the people that preceded me and all of the folks that have made tremendous contributions to this. Mine is very new, but I can recognize talent when I see it. I'd like our deputy commissioners to stand and receive a grateful round of applause from all of us here. Please. I want you to remain standing while I ask the wardens and all of our superior officers present to please stand. All of our correction officers in the room, please stand. Join so that we can give you the applause that you deserve. All the recruits. This is not a department, my friends, even though that's what we're celebrating. This is a family. And in a family, we have our squabbles, but we have each other's back. Another round of applause for all these people. Thank you. You can be seated, and thank you for your service. This is an important reality that those of us who are civilians have to grasp. I'm here right now at a time where we're talking about the past, and Joe outlined those who have served in this department in a variety of capacities, and I happen to be sitting next to two individuals that I have known over the years, and both of whom have set a path so that those who follow have a way to look at how best to function. 20 years ago, I was chairman of the Board of Legislators. I don't know how many pounds ago that was, but it was 20 years ago on the odometer. And as you have with every department of government, you will see the pictures of the leaders of that department that date back over the time frame. You'll see it in the county attorney's office. You'll see it in each of the different operating departments. You'll see it here in the Department of Corrections. In the rotunda of the County Board of Legislators, where Ben Boykin is the current chairman, there are pictures and plaques that represent the people who served in the Board of Legislators and those who served as chairman since that came into effect 50 years ago after the 1969 election. And the very first portrait on that wall is the portrait of Herman Geist, who was the first county legislator that I ever cast a vote for when I turned of age, 18 years old in those days, to vote. And when I was county board chairman, you go into the rotunda now, there's like a whole bunch of other pictures with mine and others. But in that period of time, there were just very few at that point. And I would look at Herman's picture and the others, Tom Keene of blessed memory, Andy O'Rourke, Andy Albanese, John Hand, Ed Brady, Steve Tenor, who I served under, George Oros, who I served under. And you realize that in their day, each of them dealt with challenges. And at that point in time, as a chairman of the Board of Legislators, I had challenges. One of them, as Joe outlined, was trying to make sure that the county executive, Andy Spano's vision for new penitentiary could have the support necessary from the board to make that happen. And you realize when you look back, what a debt of gratitude we owe. Joe paid that debt of gratitude to his predecessors. Let me pay that debt of gratitude. I know Ben Boykin joins me in the debt of gratitude to Herman Geist, who served as the very first chairman of the Board of Legislators. So it took me 20 years to go up one flight of stairs. Now in the lobby of the 9th floor, there are 8 pictures that precede me. And unfortunately, 6 of those individuals aren't with us anymore that I can consult with. But the person that I served under as a chair of the legislature when he was county executive. He served 12 years, I've served 16 months. So guess who's got a lot to learn in that equation? But I draw from his counsel, I draw from the experiences that he went through during his tenure as county executive. And as Joe pointed out, every generation has its challenges, but the challenges that Andy Spano overcame and succeeded are a hopeful moment for me and as my executive team and I go through our challenges. Andy, it's always a wonderful moment to be with you. Please stand and receive our appreciation. And since we're talking about changes and challenges and accomplishments, it's important to realize that most of the time we don't do what we're doing today. We don't look back. We don't remember things that have happened in the past. We're a society that constantly moves forward, but we don't always draw back from history. Everything Joe said will be on the final exam, so I hope you were taking notes. But outside of a course that we take, we almost never focus on history. It's something in the past, something that happened maybe before we got here, whether it's moving into an area or just being on the planet. But there are things that it's hard to recognize that are part of our past. How many people know, I assume everybody in this room knows, how many people really know that the Bronx in its entirety, Morris Park, Hunts Point, Riverdale, Morrisania, Fordham, Throgs Neck, was all part of Westchester County in the 1800s? How many people really understood that? That's why you have White Plains Road and Westchester Square in the Bronx. Why do you have that in the Bronx when we're up here, 10, 12 miles away? Because the Bronx was part of Westchester County. How many people know the name of William Blakely? How many people know the name of James Hopkins? James Hopkins has the equivalent of what every racehorse seeks, which is the Triple Crown. We're accustomed to the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont Stakes. James Hopkins, whom I never met, had the Triple Crown of Westchester governmental authority. He was chairman of the Board of Supervisors, he became county executive, and then he also became the administrative judge for the 9th Judicial District. So in all three branches of government, this will show up on what's the name of the show again? Jeopardy! And you'll be home watching it on TV. You'll yell out the answer. Your spouse will be impressed. But James Hopkins and the people who preceded us in these offices were people of substance, and we have forgotten who they are. Do we know the names of the people involved when the Bronx River Parkway was agreed to, when the land was purchased and the construction was done and the bonds had to be paid off? The first limited access highway in the history of the United States of America, done here in Westchester County? Do we know the names of the people who were involved in the original construction of Playland that opened in 1928? That was a major political debate, as it is again, in case you missed it. But the debate that occurred in the 1920s. How about the county center? Do we know who we can credit the creation of that innovative for? Or do we know who we can credit the original county airport, going from a military airport to the beginnings of the airport that we have today? All of those things were major accomplishments done under the Westchester County aegis, and we don't really remember the names of the people who were involved in it, because so much of what we do isn't rememberable or visible to the rest of the world. In 1969, when this merger happened, I was a high school junior, and if you asked me what happened in 1969, here's what I would tell you. Man landed on the moon in 1969. Within 2 weeks of man landing on the moon, the Woodstock concert happened. My parents wouldn't let me go anywhere near Woodstock, but generationally, that was a major thing that happened in the summer of 1969. And I know, as Andy Spano proved to me in a bet that I lost very badly back in the day, we are in Yankee land, but I am a Met fan, and the summer of '69 was one of my 2 good summers in my whole life. So I wasn't really focused on knowing what Ed McCallion was doing in those days. And the unfortunate news is that is the way most people are. We live our lives. We live them in the lanes that we live them. And we hope that we don't interact with a correctional institution directly. And we hope that we don't interact with a probation department, Rocco, to follow that. Not all of my friends who I served with in the state legislature can make that claim. But this county government, which I'm still learning how to manage, is tasked with a lot of different things. We're tasked with treating sewerage. I know it's before lunch. We're not going to talk about that too much, but we have that responsibility. We have the responsibility, as we see it, not mandated, to run a bus system so that poor people who don't have cars in suburbia can get from point A to point B. And although many of those buses aren't used by the folks who are upper class and wealthy, come with me to Petrillo Plaza in my hometown of Mount Vernon, walk with me across the street from 148 Martin Avenue, and you'll see lots of people that need public transit to go from point A to point B. And that is what this county does for them. This county government has a health department that's every day doing its job, and you don't realize it until there's a measles outbreak or a Hep C outbreak, or we realize that the communicable diseases need a professional response to it. And then all of a sudden, the county health department becomes on everybody's mind. What are we doing about this? How are we handling that problem? We administer a food stamps program. We keep land records. You go through the list of tasks that we have, and they're very disparate. And how difficult it is to have the responsibility to deal with people in the society who have broken the rules of society so seriously that they have to be taken out of society. They can't walk amongst us. You can break a rule, drive in an automobile, put the cell phone to your ear, get pulled over by a police officer. Tom Gleason's people police the parkways and the parks, and there are other entities policing all of those things, and you will be fined for breaking that. But the men and women that find their way into this institution have done worse. And there's a fine line, and this is exactly what Joe and his executive team and all those who preceded him have to try to manage. How do you deal with individuals who have seriously broken a rule of society and balancing both the function of punishment and the function of correction so that there will be a rehabilitation reality and that person can go back out into society? That may be as difficult a task as the county government has. Society has treated the person who breaks the rules very differently historically. This is not on the final. This is common sense. The colonies that started this area, when you broke the rules of the colony, you were exiled. You were put out into the wilderness. Now, that doesn't sound like a very bad thing until you realize without resources in a wilderness where there were hostile Native Americans, where there were wild animals, where you had no ability to feed yourself or survive, you could very easily die once you were exiled out of the colony in the wintertime with no ability to keep yourself warm. We've had all sorts of means of dealing with people who break the law. We read about the Wild Wild West. None of us were alive in those days. Judge comes into town, sets up shop in a saloon, takes a shot of whiskey, you're guilty, and you're hung within the hour. That's corrections of that day and of that place and time. So the royal we as society decide that we want to do it differently. We must punish, but we must also offer a path to rehabilitation, depending on the degree and the severity of the crime. We have a judicial system that tries to discern what the intent and the circumstances of the crime was, the degree of criminality, and a sentence. But when that sentence is authored, there are institutions like these to house those individuals, and there are correction officers, superior officers, and leaders that have to manage that process. People who are being taken out of society for a reason, but at the same time, programs and services to try to give them a chance so that when they leave this institution, they have a better chance to survive in a complicated, difficult society. That is a very difficult task. That is what we are celebrating today, the achievement of that task. It falls to those of us in government, in the county government, in the management of county government, the Ken Jenkins, Joan McDonald's, John Nonas of our executive team, along with the Larry Sewell of our executive team, our budget director, to remember that the people that are incarcerated here and the people that work here are not numbers on a page. They're not dollars allocated in a budget. They're human beings. The human beings that are doing a job that I am not qualified to do, I'm not temperamentally suited to do. The men and women in uniform, those that have been trained to do this, those recently trained, those who served us since 1965. The society has given them the opportunity and the authority to act within certain ways, and when we manage this government, we have to manage it understanding not just the dollars and cents of this government, but the purpose of this government. And the purpose of this department and every other department in county government, because sometimes we lose our way. We know the cost of everything in terms of taxes, but we forget the value of everything. And sometimes we even manage the government that way. Not under this administration. We see the human beings of this department, the individuals who have made their lifelong commitment to this field, and we respect that. We will sit and negotiate in due time, and we will try to come, and I'm sure we will come to an acceptable agreement in due time. We never get there the first day, but we will get there. But more importantly, you will find that those of us who are civilians, who can't do your job as you are paid to do it, and hope to never be the reason why you have to do your job incarcerated in this building, that we appreciate what you've done. We've appreciated from the days of James Hopkins, days of Herman Geist and Andy Spano, to the current group today. And just as importantly, when I go into that rotunda, I see frames of other people that followed me as chairman of the board. If I have a good long life, I will see other faces of individuals who will serve as your county executive. That we set down a philosophy and a path that will be consistent enough so that this institution can thrive for the next 50 years, not just through the next budget. God bless you, and congratulations. You may be wondering why I haven't left the podium yet. That's because it's been given to me on behalf of our full executive team, Ken Jenkins, Joan McDonald, John Nona. Am I missing anybody here? And I know our colleagues in the county legislature joined us in this. This is presented to Commissioner Spano for the dedicated men and women of the Westchester County Department of Corrections for the 50th anniversary ceremony on this day, May 10, 2019. Joe, you, your men and your women.
Thank you so much, Commissioner, and thank you so much, Mr. Latimer. Those were unbelievable speeches. Thank you. Another round of applause, please. Ladies and gentlemen, while so much of our operation falls under the executive branch of government, we also recognize that very little could be done without the support of the county legislature. Since our inception in 1969 and well before, the Board of Legislators has been a staunch supporter of our operation, of our command staff, and of each and every officer in our ranks today. They recognize the scope of what we're tasked with, as Mr. Latimer said. And it's really always a pleasure for us to go down to the board and to present on some issue of criminal justice, whether it's changes to immigration procedures or the recent changes with bail reform and pretrial discovery practices and things regarding so many of the other different programs. So it's always a pleasure for us to meet with the chairman's team and with the individual legislature. And really the two things that they always ask us and they say to us when we go down there are two things. One of which is we defer to you guys, you're the experts, and also what do you need? What do you need to do, not just to get by, but what resources do you need to do your job and to do it effectively? And that's very important to us, and it means a lot. They say, what can we do so that you can do your job well? We're very appreciative of the support always, and for having our backs. And at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce the board chairman, Benjamin Boykin.
Yeah, it's still morning, so good morning, everyone. Wow, what a nice crowd. 50 years. As has been said, that's the golden anniversary of the Department of Corrections, January 1, 1969. and the vision to put the department together, to move it from the Department of Social Services, the Women's Unit, to put it together in 1969. County Executive Latimer talked about, he was in high school, George. I happened to be first-year college student at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill at that point in time. But it was done, this department was put together with the backdrop of tremendous social unrest in America, the Vietnam War, the murders that had taken place in '68, Martin Luther King, Kennedy's, the 1968 Chicago conventions and all, and then the social upheaval. But Westchester County was leading the way with justice and prison reform, a leader, still recognized as a model in America. People want to come to Westchester County to find out what's happening with the Department of Corrections. What are you doing? It's always about the vision. It's always about change, and it's always about challenges. There will always be change. We will always have challenges. It will never be perfect. We'll continue to work toward perfection, but it will always be a work in progress. And for that, we want to commend everyone who's had a hand in this, from Commissioner Wright, who was really, truly a visionary. And I want you to read what's in the Historical Society's write-up. The daughter, thank you for being in Mississippi. Wow, that was tough times being down there at that part in the 60s and all. I knew Commissioner Norwood very well, my frat brother. Clyde I was our frat brother, so we knew what he did for the department and for the other commissioners that have come. And with that, Commissioner Spano, please join me up here. Majority Leader Catherine Parker, please join me up here. Legislator Damon Mark, please join me up here as the County Board of Legislators today presents this proclamation to the Department of Corrections on its golden anniversary. And I want to read a couple lines from this because it is so important. I think I can read this without my glasses. Whereas during the 50 years since its establishment on January 1, 1969, the Westchester County Department of Corrections has been recognized as a national leader in rehabilitative and reentry programs and a model for criminal justice initiatives. And whereas placing themselves in harm's way on every shift, the many correctional professionals of the Westchester County Department of Corrections, including its officers, supervisors, civilian staff members, medical and mental health professionals, teachers, program providers, and spiritual leaders, perform a critical frontline public service function that is often recognized too few, but with an impact felt by all, and whereby, by virtue of its unique status as the only criminal justice agency in New York State accredited by the American Corrections Association, the National Commission on Correctional Health Care, and the United States as a pre-compliant, we recognize the Westchester County Department of Corrections, its leaders, staff, retirees, and partners for overcoming challenges, implementing change, and achieving many significant milestones. There are other whereases, but we want to say that resolved that Friday, May 10th, 2019, be proclaimed Westchester County Department of Corrections 50 Years of Service Day in Westchester County, and be it resolved that the text of this proclamation be carried throughout the county for all people of goodwill to forever know. Go by the Westchester County Center today, and you will see you're on the board. Congratulations on the golden anniversary of the Department of Corrections. Thank you.
All right, for our final presenter, I'm going to freestyle at this point and not try and use any notes because everybody else is. Our final speaker today is somebody that we could not do anything with. As I said, our partnerships extend locally, but they also extend right up the Hudson Valley to Albany and beyond. Chairman Alan Riley is here today on behalf of the New York State Commission of Correction. The SCOC, as we call it, or the Commission, that's our oversight agency at the Albany level, at the New York State government level. They're tasked with making sure that all jails statewide follow the same standards with regard to food services, education, hygiene, access to library services, access to congregate religious services. It's a small organization that's tasked with a lot, but we have a wonderful working relationship with the field inspectors, the medical review board. It's always a pleasure for us to host auditors from the State Commission of Correction, because as much as they are our oversight agency, they're also very much a partnership. And it's a partnership that we look to give back to. We participate regularly in the State Commission Standards Review Committee. We recognize that Westchester has resources. We have an informed and aggressive leadership team and an informed and interested populace that wants to see us do right by the people in our custody and by our staff. So we are always there for our other jails to say, this is what we're doing here, because what's going on in Westchester, whether it's issues with regard to mentally ill people, segregation, minors, things of that nature, K2, the opioid epidemic, we're well positioned to be able to be a leader on a lot of these different initiatives, but these are things that are going on up in the Adirondacks, on the Canadian border, out in the Western Tier, out on Long Island. So we give back each and every day through part of the New York State Sheriff's Association and as part of the Standards Review Committee. And what really makes the commission just wonderful to work with is that the leadership team there are former elected sheriffs, including Alan Riley, who was an elected sheriff in Madison County in the Shenango Valley. So they get it. This is not somebody that's never worked in a jail or never been on patrol. These are people that know what's going on, and these are people that, as much as it's an oversight agency, it's very much a partnership. Chairman?
Thank you. With an introduction like that, I shouldn't have to say too much, right? County Executive Latimer, Chairman Boykin, Commissioner Spano, elected officials, honored guests, correctional staff, family, and friends. Good morning. Let me first congratulate Westchester County Department of Corrections on 50 years of correctional service as a standalone agency. In the past 50 years, Westchester County Corrections has faced many challenges and changes. Out of these challenges and changes, they have achieved a growing list of accomplishments. Westchester Department of Corrections is the only correctional facility in New York State to achieve national accreditation. Accreditations from American Correctional Association, the National Commission on Corrections, and they are recognized by the Department of Justice as a PREA compliance agency. Congratulations. How about a round of applause? In the past 50 years, there has been a vast number of improvements in correctional facilities across New York State. Facilities are now built to offer a better environment for both the inmate population and the correctional staff. Programs such as educational opportunities for high school degrees and college courses are available to the inmate population. County agencies, outside agencies, along with not-for-profits, offer such programs as religious services, vocational training, job interview training, parental training. Rehabilitation efforts are becoming the norms in facilities across the state. These programs work to help the inmate population re-enter into society. Under the leadership of Commissioner Joseph Spano and his executive team, the men and women of Westchester County Department of Corrections have made a difference here in Westchester County. They have created a better environment, a learning environment, with many programs available to the inmate population. With the creation of the SOAR Detox Unit and the many programs, they have afforded many the opportunity for a second chance to become productive members of society. Commissioner Spano, your facility is one that has been thinking outside the box in correctional services. You are changing the way local correctional facilities have been viewed for years. You have taken an audience and taught them how to use their time to improve themselves and their families. You have also trained your staff in cultural differences to give them a better understanding of the everyday society and the cultural difference that live among us. In closing, the Commission of Corrections here is to offer any technical assistance we may offer to moving Westchester County facility forward in rehabilitation and reentry efforts. We also continue to look forward to working with you hand in hand on programs. Congratulations once again, and God bless you.
Thank you, Chairman. We're nearing the end of our program. We're going to fire up the grills in a little bit and invite everybody to stay with us for a barbecue. As the ceremony draws to a close, it makes me think of something that County Executive Latimer said in his first two State of the County addresses, which he delivered in Chairman Boykin and the rest of the legislative chamber on the 8th floor of the McKellian office building. He said he chose to have his county addresses in what he called the People's House, recognizing that we are not here today without the people of Westchester County. Today, this is your house, everybody in the audience. This is your house. This is the big house. This is a house that would not stand without the help of everybody in this tent. So I want to give a big applause to everybody here today. And you know what? It's a Friday. The weather held out. We want you to take the time to spend some time here to catch up with each other, to look at the displays, to look at the photos, to really just spend the time with us. We hope you can stay for lunch. Our Imam, John Nasheed, he's going to offer the benediction, followed by America the Beautiful, which is sung by a retired correction officer, Cecilia Hankins, who started with us in 1982. So ladies and gentlemen, please rise and remain standing for the benediction and the retiring of the colors. Imam, take us home.
So many beautiful faces, so many memories of the past. May God bless us all. Assalamu alaikum, that is peace be upon us all. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. With God's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. All the praise is due to Allah, God, the cherisher and sustainer of the worlds, most gracious, most merciful, master of the day of judgment. You do we worship, in thine aid we seek. Show us the straight way, the way of those upon whom thou hast bestowed thy grace, those whose portion is not wrath and who go not astray. May God continue to bless us, our administration, our leaders, our teachers, clergy, our inmates, our hardworking staff, and may God save our children. Ameen.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, with perfect mountains, majesty above the fruited plains. America, America, God sheds his grace on thee and crowned thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining seas.
Mark time. Halt. Forward. Halt. Mark time. Halt. On guard. Forward. Halt. On guard. Halt. Retrieve the colors. Mark time. Halt. Right turn. Halt. Forward and a half step. Halt. Forward. Halt.
Thank you, everybody.